Okay. Yeah, so to get started for this week, I think it makes sense. We are about to push our Ask a Question feature to production. So I think it makes sense to run through it on staging. Pat, do you want me to do that, or do you want to take the reins for a mini demo?
You should do it because my computer lags. I don't know, when I share screen
Okay,
and have
cool.
video at the same time, my computer starts to lag. So
Cool. Yeah, let me pull it up right now. And so I'll just like go through the flow here, and then there are a couple like copy questions that we want to get you guys ideas on. So here's our staging website. I don't know if you all have ever seen this before. It's like the like practice version of the actual website we use at researchhub.com. So here in the feed, you can sort by papers, which is like the traditional post, actual scientific paper, or a post, which is the freeform new feature here. So these are all, they pretty much show up in the main feed, just like a paper would, with its own title, and then a preview, which is the actual text of the post. If you want to make your own new post, you would go up to this button here, and then distinguish that you want to ask a question or start a discussion. And then once you're here, you pick the hub. The title. And then you can ask a question or really any kind of post. We're not 100% sure what people will do with this, but we kind of want to keep it open to see what type of behaviors people actually engage in. And then once that happens, you're the author, and anybody else can comment on it and upvote. So that's sort of like the, I guess, like total flow for this feature. It ends up in the main feed here. Do you guys have, it's kind of like what we showed last week too, but do you all have any thoughts on just that overall, like couple of screens?
I wonder if would be a reason to make them more visually distinct from the paper posts, right? Because some people can have this criticism that they, because otherwise people, it would ruin the perceived quality of the papers. Maybe
that is something we've discussed a lot. Of like, should we make something that distinguishes this post from a regular paper? Because right now they look exactly the same. So you can't really tell like whether something is a created post or it's a paper. And so my thinking behind this is we're gonna like we'll probably leave it for like a week like this, because some people wanted it to be the same, and then some people wanted it to be different. And so the easiest thing is if it's the same, we're just gonna release it probably for a week, see how people feel about it, and get like people's opinions and thoughts. If it feels like it's too demeaning towards the paper, like actual scientific papers, because a lot more work was put into them, then yeah, we're gonna have to make some visual distinction there. So
I remember last time we talked about having, like, when you post on Reddit, there can be flares on the post.
Yeah.
Like, I think it would be cool if we had like question or data set or methods or something like that. Just like a little flare here, I think would be cool and distinguish it well.
Yeah. We can do something like that, but I want to leave it for now, like undistinguished, and then we go from there.
Okay, cool. So when it comes to this copy here, does this make sense to you all? Ask a question or start a discussion. All discussions must be scientific in nature. Ideas, theories, questions, the community are all welcome.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, does make sense. Only one remark is that when you click new post, it says upload a paper or ask a question, but then when you go back to the feed, it says that post is a different section. So now it's clear for me because you showed it, but when you click new post, then gives you an option between to choose between two options, and on the feed is just one thing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So there should be a different term, right? So paper as opposed to what? Non-paper post or something?
Yeah, I don't know, like something similar to the ask a question kind of stuff, because then if you click new post, yeah, when I click the last option, I will create this kind of content. For me, just as a new user, I think it might be quite
Maybe
yeah.
I mean maybe we just call them discussions here in where instead of posts right here. Yeah, just call them
Yeah, then
discussions.
maybe we should change that ask a question or start a discussion, just make it like discussion as well, the call to action.
I like that because I think discussion can easily be a question. That's how you start.
Right.
Maybe what do you guys think about this UI here? Like, do you like having these all separated with kind of 3 tabs, or maybe like posts could be like a drop-down filter? Do you all like?
Oh no! Please don't make them a drop-down filter. I think right now it's amazing.
Cool.
Yeah, totally agree.
And so, in theory, you'd want to change this copy to discussions right here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then, so if we go into here, what do you all think about this copy? What can you post here? Ask a question, start a discussion about a certain topic, post a relevant photo to a hub.
We can change that photo to more like, we can add some stuff, like post a data set, post conference paper, whatever, conference.
Like a multimedia file or whatever.
Yeah, it posts a video, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I think right now it doesn't, like when I read it, it did not look like you want my presentation here. It looked like you want an image.
Yeah, image.
Yeah, so if you want it to be, maybe post a file and then specify it can be a presentation, a scientific video, or an image like a graph, or a photo that you took of a lizard that is really important for science or something.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Those are all really good ideas. And these guidelines make sense to you? Do you all think that this section is necessary, or maybe it would be better to just have like all of the different types of research outputs you could post?
The having 2 separate paragraphs kind of makes sense. It makes it easier. Right, the top one is kind of like procedural, what can be uploaded, and the bottom one is how should you do it when you decide to,
For me, I would want to see, and this is just me, I don't know about you guys, but a drop down. So like under title, being able to choose which type of post I'm doing. So if it's a data set or if it's a conference paper or a poster or whatever.
Yeah, I think that this is probably related to the flare thing that Joyce and Pat were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I agree.
It might be, I think, fine for now, but I think that was another reason why I liked the distinction between posts and discussions, because it is easily upscalable. Like eventually, if this is going to be really popular and you're going to have a lot of entries that are conference presentations, that are graphs, that are data sets, and you will create an entire new category, then you might consider creating like a whole new type of post. But for now, because there is not a lot of users, I think they should all be clumped together for now, maybe.
This is probably a little bit in the future too, but Kobe, it kind of reminds me of the UI that you had, where you have like outputs here, and then papers and Q&A and data sets, and we could have different tabs for all the different flares that we eventually had. That might be too busy.
Yes, that's exactly what
Right.
I was describing just now, but for future.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this was really helpful. Thank you, guys. Is there anything else in general about this feature? Any feedback that we can incorporate?
So preview and edit. So I don't know how this looks like when I'm posting. My concerns, right? And how like will I be edit this later? I don't think that's something that you're concerned about right now. But yeah, like I want to edit. Oh, I have typo. I can't edit it right now.
Right.
When a post is edited, do you think it's important to have like a edited in parentheses, like Slack or some other social media sites have, or just let the author do whatever they want?
I mean, I would prefer having edited thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like a safety thing. Like someone replies to something that has changed completely, and now it's like whatever they're saying is totally out of context. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think that's basically mandatory, to be honest, for the reasons Kobe described. And I wonder if you remember this whole idea with living papers that you can modify and update and just have the version history. Maybe if the person introduces a large amount of edit to the comment, it can kind of like fork into two separate discussions. Like if eventually in the comments it turns out that the question was actually slightly different than what was originally thought, and the person goes and updates the original post, maybe they can. Probably too much hassle to have like a version history for the post.
I think we actually have code for version history that we used for the summary section initially. So I don't know if that's like salvageable.
We do have code for version history here too. We just haven't implemented it yet. Yeah,
so that's probably far in the future type of thing, but ultimately if you guys will be able to do it one day, that's going to be a huge plus, I think. So if you can, please save the code to do it.
Yeah, we've set up this feature so it can do it too. We just haven't implemented it yet. So
perfect.
Yeah,
cool. And so the next thing I want to talk about was Anton's feedback from this morning regarding making discussions more discoverable. Anton, do you mind just kind of quickly say what you were thinking with that comment, and then we can chat about it more in depth?
Right. So as you might have experienced yourself, right now, if you log in ResearchHub, it's kind of hard to figure out where where you should be, where the discussion is at, because right now it's a little barren. So you would probably want to be in the center of the action, but it's really hard to tell where it is. And I was wondering if we could replace the latest activity sidebar on the right with something that's more similar to YouTube homepage, where it would be composed every time. It's like you refresh the page, it would be composed with, let's say, 10 comments or pages that are currently experiencing the most traffic, or they have the most upvoted comments, or it has a recent discussion that the algorithm thinks that it's going to continue or something like that. And it doesn't need to be the latest activity. I think it needs to be more encompassing. Like I think it gives you. It could give the developers a big freedom in investigating what people are interested in, right? So you can sneak in. Sometimes you could sneak in a few of the comments from like several months ago and see if it still holds up, if it still attracts people attention, if it's rediscovered by a large number of people, And you can play around with it. You can have a few comments from this week, a few comments from the last week, a few comments from like years ago, a few pages, I don't know, it can be filled up with anything that sounds promising, you know.
So just to drill into this a little bit further, do you mind talking about the value difference between what you're describing and the most discussed filter that we currently have, going by like this week or this month or this year?
Right. So the most like you mentioned in the discussions, first of all, most discussed is a rather straightforward metric. It wouldn't. I don't think it's a great predictor of whether it's going to be a nice place for you to land and start a discussion, right? If it has, you know, a lot of comments, but not a lot of upvotes, that's probably not represented in the discussion filter, right? Or is it? Like, I don't know how the discussion filter is set up, but I also think that the important thing is that you are, as you know, as a developers of ResearchHub, you can kind of like direct the attention of the users. It doesn't need to be the most discussed paper, but you can make it the most discussed paper if it all of a sudden happens to be on this trending list of all the users at the same time, right? So right now, I think the problem is that the users are spread thin, right? So they all have their hubs or whatever. So you can change that by redirecting them here and there towards the same, you know, shared interest or whatever. And I think it's, you know, more obvious and less work, and then going through the filters. Yeah.
So just to repeat it back to make sure that I understand, rather than displaying like the most commented posts, it would almost be like we have a flashlight to direct attention to whatever we think should be the most commented in the future, or people would be most interested in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And I think like in the future, we can also add like a personalized like part to it, where it's like not just what we want to like put a flashlight on, but like what do we want to show like Anton specifically based on his prior interests.
Yes, absolutely. So I would, and I don't know how it's done in big companies like YouTube, but I'm pretty sure there is, you know, similar logic to it, right? So some of the items that are going to be, you know, pushed to all the users are going to be common for everyone, just maybe because we feel like, you know, it's such a big hit that everyone should see it. But maybe some other will be personalized, right? And out of, let's say, if there are 10 items on the list, it's up to you, right, to set it up and, you know, and decide how many of those are going to be targeted to you specifically, how many of those are going to be ResearchHub wide, how many of those are going to be new comments. And those tweaks are all, I think they're very promising to play with, right? And you guys are, you know.
Yeah, we can track it in like, I'm thinking we can probably track it in amplitude, unless we do it already, and get a sense of what people want to, like what are people clicking on the most. Yeah, it's like a nice thing to get a sense of what people are excited about. And I agree with Anton, it doesn't have to be time-based, but maybe to start off, we can take what Anton said and have it time-based, and then like maybe loosen up the time you know, criteria. But yeah, all good ideas here.
One thing I really like about this idea is I think it presents a value prop to researchers. If we hit them up and say like, hey, we want you to do an AMA, you know, and we'll guarantee that you'll be on the front page for a week, and that all of our users will see your paper, and we'll try and direct them to this discussion to participate. And so I think that's pretty cool, like as a cold email to a researcher who wants more attention on their paper.
So you're thinking, Joyce, that like an AMA, an ongoing AMA, or like just an AMA that has happened will show up in the sidebar as well, like as opposed to like in the homepage in like an AMA section?
Yeah, I think like Anton's saying, like we could shine a light on specific posts, and that might just be whatever people are discussing at the moment. But it could also be like manually we set up events that like we'll say, hey, researcher, this is worth your time to pay attention to this because we're going to direct X traffic towards your paper of cool people who want to like talk to you about it and potentially maybe cite it later.
Yeah, and you can kind of condition, I think, the researchers to do desirable behaviors, right? So what would be the actions you would want the most from the authors of the papers to do, right? You would probably want them to be active in the comments. You would probably want them to provide the unlicensed version of the text. You would probably want them to do other things. And all of those things, they don't necessarily need to guarantee that you are in this list, right? Because that's not upscalable, right? If you have 10K researchers, they can't all be in there. But it can increase the likelihood of getting in this list every time people refresh the page, right? So that's, I think, is good enough.
Cool. Does anybody else have any ideas, thoughts on this topic before we move on? So the last thing that I want to talk about, and then there's a couple other things after if we have extra time, but we spoke last week about having like a manual RSC program for like power users who would get like extra bonus RSC that we would just send to their wallets if they like did specific actions. And so the way I'm thinking about this is almost like a big time trial and error experiment, where like on a weekly basis, we can come back every Tuesday and be like, hey, what's working, what's not working, what should we tweak? And we can kind of like experiment to find the right incentive structure that we can then scale up by actually having it like within the app. So I have like a very beginning incentive structure and want to get your feedback on it. And please feel free to just make fun of this and let me know if this is like actually something that would drive your behavior. So we could just set up like a Google Doc or like a Google spreadsheet and say, hey, if you comment on 3 papers and post 3 papers, you get 300 RSC at the end of a 7-day period. 5 and 5, 600, 7 and 7, 1200. And then we could also do something where like every Tuesday we get together and vote on the best comment of the week. And then that gets an additional 1200. So yeah, curious what you think about these numbers. It's pretty simple to get started. But yeah, any ideas or criticisms?
Can you describe the mechanism for nominating the best comment? Because if, let's say it's 10 of our users, 7 comments, so it's going to be 70 comments. So should we vote on all 70 of them, or how does it work?
I was just thinking, just in this call, we could all like maybe I could put together a list of my top 5 or something like that, and then we could all vote on it or something. But it could really be whatever you guys wanted. I thought this would be a nice incentive to instead of just saying like, oh, hey, great paper, I really enjoyed this, like something where the comment is more in depth, because there might be some big pot at the end of the rainbow if everybody also really enjoyed the more in-depth comment.
Yeah, that's what I meant. So right now, you are nominated personally, right? So, but that's not sustainable. That's not upscalable. I like this idea, but eventually we will need some sort of judges, maybe that are not part of the power users, so they're not affiliated or they're not friends or whatever, that they can go through these comments and select like the top 5 or whatever.
So what mechanism do you think would work best in like this kind of manual paradigm, just to test it out?
I think, like I said, the easiest way to implement right now would be to have a separate power user, not power user, meta user or something that is also going to be rewarded for reading all these comments, but will not be part of the vote. Right? And their only goal would be to nominate top 5 comments or top 10.
Okay, that makes sense. So like a kind of like neutral power user that nominates.
Yeah, power user committee or something.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, maybe they should do the entire thing. We shouldn't vote on our own comments, maybe.
Oh, yeah, so it's just like a editorial committee nominate and internally. Okay.
Right.
We can also see if like the upvoting on comments gives any kind of distinction. It's not clear if that will, right? Because maybe people don't upvote the comments and everything's at 1. But if it actually does create distinction, like it could just be like, hey, we look at the top 10 upvoted comments and then just vote on those or whatever.
We can have both, because this criterion can be sometimes unfair, right? Because some papers are just intrinsically not as interesting or whatever. But we can do both. We can have, half the prize goes to top editorial committee picks, and another half goes to, user selected.
Yeah, this is honestly ideal, because I feel like this is exactly the point where we can try something, see if it works, and then iterate, based on what's working, not working. Pat, I really like that idea of starting with upvotes, because that's so easy. It's really easy to just be like, oh, hey, what were the 10 most upvoted comments? And I can share them in a Google Doc before this call.
Right.
And so that way everybody can look at them. And then like, if that's clearly like causing some bias, or people are commenting on like only like THC and like MDMA papers and stuff like that, then we can, try something else in order to make it a little bit more fair.
The only bias I can see right now, and obviously we can just get started and see how it goes, is time sensitivity. So I'm thinking, what if someone submits a comment at the very end of the week? It's a great comment, but maybe you've not received as many upvotes. So maybe like we can just use the top votes as like a huge indicator, plus maybe some other comments that can be nominated in addition.
So if the vote is on Tuesday, then the smart move would be to upload all 7 papers on Wednesday, right? Next Wednesday, immediate. So how about we make it a little bit more fair and make it that you have to upload like not all at the same time, but 1 per day. Right? That would be more fair and probably better for the website, right?
So the way that I'm thinking about this is simplest first, and then we'll see what happens, because it might be that like everybody rushes out of this call and immediately posts papers. But I have a feeling that's probably it. Maybe a couple people will, but I think it will end up being more distributed. So I could be totally wrong, but I think it makes sense to just do something simple and then reassess next week and see what's working, what's not working, go from there.
All right. How do people join the Power User crew?
So I think everybody who's a mod, we can already have them automatically in the crew. I'm writing a blog post now to kind of like, it's like a call to arms in order to get people to post more papers and post more comments. So at the bottom of that, there will be like a Google like survey where people can sign up to be Power users. And then like I'll get on a phone call with them, introduce myself, say what's up, tell them to come to our community call. And then, so we can try and like bring more people in from that blog post too. But starting out with this group here. And then probably the open source development group as well. What do you all think about the rewards? Do you think these are appropriately sized? It's hard to know because there isn't like a value or anything really. But just compared to like the rewards you'd get from posting a paper, they're probably like 25x, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Any last thoughts on this program in general?
So what's the one thing that we're testing here? Like, is this only about the like whether people are sensitive to reward or not? Like, yeah.
I think the end goal is to come up with a V2 of our incentive structure in general. And so we're going to start it off with a small sampling of like power users. So people who are basically like in the room helping to influence the rewards, and then see what works on that small sample, and eventually build it into the application, kind of like Anton had suggested like a month or so ago, with like, gamified reward structures that encourage people to participate on a daily basis, and have it be open to anyone who uses the app. or wants to be like a verified power user submitting like their academic email or claiming a paper or something. But yeah, the idea is to test out a baseline incentive structure to refine it and then eventually scale it up to something that's actually within the application, reminding people to post every day.
Okay, so the success is everybody posts every day.
Yeah, ideally, like having start to generate that conversation. That is probably the most interesting thing, that when a new person comes to ResearchHub, they say, oh, look, there are like smart people talking about smart things here. I want to join in. So I'll sign up and make a comment as well.
Maybe you should specify what kind of comment it should be, right? So you post a paper and you leave a comment on that paper, and maybe try to make this comment like welcoming other people into the discussion, or asking a question, or describe, or like giving a brief summary of the paper. Like, what do you want it to be?
What do you think? Kind of my thought here was the nice part is we're all a tight group. So if somebody is like trying to scam the system, we'll all know. And like there'll be a little bit of like, like social discouragement of that type of behavior. But yeah, I can definitely include instructions in the blog and then on the Google Sheets too, saying like, hey, here's exactly what we want. But part of me feels like it'll be interesting to see what the comments are. Like Anton, your comments the past couple of days have been like pretty interesting. And they're not necessarily like about the paper itself, but more about like the topic in general. So yeah, I kind of just want to see what people do and then, reassess as a group and say, hey, is this what we're looking for? Is this interesting? Should we try and push it in another direction?
Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, thank you guys for your feedback. This is super helpful. Do you all have anything else in general just on the project so far?
And just one remark on the last thing we discussed. I really like all the ideas, but the feeling I'm getting is like when you're voting for like the best comment, then yeah, actually it's for me like, is that ResearchHub? Because for me, it was like, open source community. We want to get away from all editorial boards. And now we're creating one ourselves. And then it's like, but then it's not like what the community likes, but it's more like these select people like. And then they vote. And then, like, as an outsider, you might get a feeling like, they choose what they like. Maybe their friends, they upvote it. I mean, I like all the ideas, but that's maybe a feeling some people will get.
And I love that you brought that up, Philip. Thank you. I think that's like, it's pretty important to make sure that we don't do that long term. I think the goal of this, and you guys let me know if this is maybe like antithetical to what we're trying to do with ResearchHub, but the goal here is to like do a small scale experiment to figure out what we can scale up to the entire community. And I think the reason why it's within this tight-knit group is just because you all have, put in the time and effort compared to the average user. So the feedback that we get from you guys, in theory, is going to be more actionable than the whole group or the community in general. So it'll start off small, but then, there would not be like an editorial board making these decisions once we actually build it into the application. Like it would be decentralized.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's. I mean, it's a great idea for in the beginning, but definitely needs some review in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And then Philip, if we do end up going in that direction, make sure that you publicly make fun of me, because that's not what we're trying to do. So like, if it does end up going in that direction, remind me that that's not the mission of ResearchHub. So like, I very much appreciate you kind of like checking us there and making sure that we stay, on the mission of what we're trying to accomplish. So I definitely appreciate that. Cool. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining. Really appreciate it. See you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya.